Hi, my name is Keegan, and I run the Combo Organ department here at Chicago Electric Piano Company. This is the Farfisa Super Syntaccordion, and it is a crazy beast. The most advanced combo organ accordion ever made.
Let's start with a quick overview of the Super Syntaccordion.
So the Super Syntaccordion, in addition to having several different voice options, is also a real acoustic accordion. It has 7 microphones inside, 5 for the front keyboard, 2 for the back, for the chords and bass section, and actually does function as an acoustic accordion. Unfortunately, I don't function as an acoustic accordionist. What were they thinking when they made this? Towards the end of the 70s, with so much synthesizer technology really being pushed to the forefront of popular music, all I can figure is that accordionists felt like they might have been missing out a little bit. So, Farfisa decided to fulfill their wildest wishes and dreams by combining a string machine, a monophonic synthesizer, a combo organ, and a electronic piano section into all the same instrument, while again, still being an acoustic accordion. So Farfisa actually goes way back with accordions. In fact, it could be said that most of the technology that they ended up developing for combo organs was actually intended for accordions. In fact, some of their first products were electronic accordions. Pretty much throughout their history, you can find an accordion that is paired up with whatever their latest combo organ offerings for the time would have been, starting with the transaccord and moving all the way up to this beast here, the Super Syntaccordion. Almost all of them required a pretty giant power supply and electronic section that was separate from the accordion, and that's what we see here with the exposed circuit board. This is actually the brain of the instrument, and this really only serves as a digital control for the analog circuitry within. So inside the Super Syntaccordion brain, there are a lot of electronics. Several layers of circuit boards, all interconnecting with lots of analog wiring, shielded wiring, just a big old mess. It was pretty difficult figuring out all the individual issues and basically just trying to track down where physically the electronic controlling components exist on these several dozen boards. It's quite a wild mix of digital technology and analog technology, which was kind of par for the course for the time period. But when you have a single accordion controller attempting to control it all through a single stream of data, it's quite a headache to troubleshoot.
Let's talk about the features of the Super Syntaccordion.
Starting with the acoustic section of the instrument, it is an acoustic accordion. However, you do have a set of 7 microphones that allow you to route a pickup version of your sound through to an electronic amplifier. So over here we have a volume and tone control for the front canto keyboard, as well as a volume and tone control for the back section with the chords and bass. On the front here we have several register controls for the acoustic section of the canto keyboard, and we also have a section of register controls for the back end, as well as a cancel button. So I'm going to start with the flute section, which is most like the combo organ offerings from Farfisa at the time. By this time, they were offering a full section of harmonics, much like a Hammond would have, though not with drawbars. The tab switches allow you to make some really interesting kind of combo organ-like effects, and add those all the way up, as well as a percussion section, much like Hammonds would have. You can also affect the length, and you can also initiate a repeat effect. What's really cool is that they also have a fully adjustable sustain section, so unlike a Hammond, you can let these ring out for quite a long time. In addition to being able to build your own sounds with the tab switches, you have access to 5 presets. They're all pretty interesting, but also pretty boilerplate. The vibraphone setting is pretty cool. Very mellow. And the marimba offers its own little repeat effect. And then, of course, cancel just shuts them off and allows you to access the tab switches again. Moving on to the orchestral section, we have 2 footages for strings and 1 for brass. The strings has a pretty great sound, very arp Solina-like. They use the same phase shift vibrato to generate chorus effect as the Solina and other keyboards from the time period would. You also have another octave to add on top. And much like the flutes, you have a sustain control that gives it a pretty nice long tail. You also have a brilliance control to really make the strings pop out. Next, we have the brass section, which, much like the strings, is sort of controlled in the same way. Though you don't get a phase shift effect on it, you instead get a small sort of brightness envelope that sort of is reminiscent of a brass instrument. And that can be adjusted with the brilliance control as well. The next section, illustrated with the blue tab switches, are the percussion voices. Now, these are different from the percussion settings that are associated with the combo organ section. These are literal piano and harpsichord emulators. The piano is sort of a nice mellow sound. And a nice decay. And harpsichord is nice and bright. And combining the two has a nice, nice little effect. Almost like a guitar or a guitar synthesizer from the time period. So that brings us to the synthesizer section, which is a pretty cool section in and of itself. You have your presets down here, which more or less just dictate the octave and the waveform. That's our trumpet, trombone, tuba. You can hear how it's going down the octaves. Sax, clarinet, and oboe. And violin being sort of the most sawtooth. On top of that, you can add vibrato, which gets a nice little delay. And you can also add the decay and wah effect. Now, the decay gives you sort of a attack and sustain sort of effect. And it'll die away. And you can adjust that decay length with the decay slider. You can also add a wah-wah envelope to it. And that's somewhat affected by the decay length. I think that effect sounds particularly good on the tuba. So you can actually achieve quite a few different sounds with just these simple presets. You can also affect the brilliance to change the overall effect of that wah-wah effect. And then you can also add the monophonic synthesizer voice to your left-hand bass. And you can also introduce an interesting effect called the bellows effect, where the movement of the bellows pressurizes a specific switch on the inside of the instrument and tells the organ, or the pretty much any setting, if you set it up correctly, it tells the synthesizer to only play when the bellows are being pressed or depressed. Basically, only when pressure is in the bellows or vacuum is in the bellows will the synthesizer sound. It's a little hard to demonstrate on the table here, but it sounds something like this. So moving on to the left-hand side of the accordion, we did talk a little bit about how you could assign the synthesizer section to the bass notes, and that's a fun effect. But you can also add strings to the bass. And you do get several octave controls for that. And they correspond to the actual reeds that are shut on and off within the acoustic section themselves. You can also add a bass guitar effect to the bass notes. That's a pretty interesting sound. On the gray tabs, you have your basic flute. So it subtracts it removes that sort of transient effect that the bass guitar achieves. You can also have the bass notes sustained for a certain amount of time. Moving on to the chord section, we have strings on chords. And those are affected with, you get one extra octave of the strings on chords. So much like you have the 8th footage and the 16 footage on the front end here, you get 2 octaves to choose from on the back end of the chords. You can also add brass to the chords. As well as a basic flute section with sustain as well. Touching briefly on the vibrato section, the 3 tab switches that control them are on and off, fast and slow, and vibrato delay. Anyone who's worked with 70s combo organs or synthesizers will be familiar with this little section. Vibrato is simply vibrato on and off. And fast is fast and slow. Adding the vibrato delay gives us dramatic pause on the vibrato when the chord is keyed. Can you hear it coming in after a short delay there? Normally, this section would also control vibrato on the flute section. Now, this is pitch vibrato. This is actually phase shift vibrato using a solid-state bucket brigade type chip, which is somewhat different than what many combo organs of the same time period would have used, but very similar to what string machines would have used. The fact that there's no vibrato on the flutes right now is due to the fact that we're using a separate output included on the front of the instrument here, and that was so that you could run straight non-vibrato pitches into your rotating speaker cabinet of choice. Specifically, in their own manual, they list the, the RSC Farfisa, the rotating speaker cabinet. Additionally, with this instrument, you get a glide function very similar to Lowry's of the same time period. It allows you to bend down by a half step. Obviously, this does not work on the acoustic accordion section, but all of the electronic voices will follow that pattern. So down here, I've got a pedal with a little tab on the side, and when your foot presses down on that, it allows you to drop the pitch by a centime. It also happens to pause the vibrato. That's another holdover from the Lowry circuit that Farfisa is borrowing from. So we've gone through most of the functions, but there are certain ways that these different voices interact in fun and interesting ways. Selecting a few different voices here, we've got a few different flutes selected, as well as the piano and harpsichord, brass, and one of the strings sections. So let's play what that sounds like. It's a fun combo. But what you're able to do with the bellows control here is tell the instrument to only play the strings when the bellows are pressurized. So right now, only getting brass and our percussion voices. So through audio here, you can hear that the string voices only come in when the bellows are moving. That allows you to sort of create sort of contrapuntal passages if you're a very skilled player with the Syntaccordion. The next bellows control switch reverses that effect. So, no bellow movement, you only get the string sound. However, when you move the bellows, you get all your other voices back, and the strings cancel. Essentially reversing the effect that the first switch does. Now, unfortunately, when you throw both switches, it just shuts off all of the voices. So it gives you sort of a quick way of shutting off all of the electronic voices in case you just want to access the acoustic accordion section. It is crazy. I didn't talk about the volume controls for the chords and the brass, or chords and the bass in the back, but that's sort of not that important. Another interesting interaction between the voices and the synthesizer section on this Synthaccordion is the selectable multiphonic automatic register button. Had to think about what that stood for. MAR is the moniker on the Switch, and what it allows you to do is prioritize the top note that you're playing to the monophonic synthesizer section and subtract it from the polyphonic section, which allows you to single out the synthesizer voice as a top solo voice. So here we can hear only synthesizer, but you are able to play notes below it. And in that way, you're able to single out a solo voice with the electronic voices already in play. Lastly, one of the effects that Farfisa saw fit to add to the instrument is an auto-sustain function, which allows you to play a chord or a passage and have only the last note that's played ring out and sustain. So right now we've got the sustain setting at its max for the strings. So I'll be able to play a chord down here, and of course it sustains out. But if I'm to immediately play a note up at the top register, it'll cut out the previous chord or passage that was played. On the output panel of the Synthaccordion brain, we have 4 different outputs. General output sends all of your voices through the same 1/4-inch jack. Using the first output subtracts that organ voice and allows you to send it to a rotating cabinet while turning off the phase shift vibrato that would normally accompany that voice. The second one allows for your string and orchestra sections. And the final one gives you your monophonic synth and piano and harpsichord voices. So we also, of course, have our big multi-pin connector for the big cable that goes up to the Synthaccord controller. Now, the Synthaccord only communicates with a single stream of data to the preset memory banks, but it also has several other pins for controlling all the analog circuitry that then goes on to form the sounds, like filtering and volume controls, as well as sustain controls. All of that are controlled with analog controls up at the Synthaccordion controller and fed back down to the multi-pin cable through this port here. We also have the volume pedal and glide control connector. That again controls volume levels and the glide function. Down here we also have the constant bass switch. Now what that does, it subtracts the bass voice from the volume pedal control and allows you to have a constant volume level for your bass notes. We also have a 1/4-inch output for only the microphones from the acoustic section, so that you can route the sound from the acoustic section around the volume control for the electronics and independently control through your amazing accordion touch the dynamics of the instrument.
The Synthaccordion may seem like a silly instrument now, but back in the 70s, if you were an accordionist, this was the most powerful keyboard you could have under your hands and would really rival some of the most advanced synthesizers at the time period. Thanks for watching, and check out our channel for more esoteric keyboard knowledge.
The point is to have the most badass accordion in the history of accordions, and no one can say boo to you.
Like and subscribe!